In this lesson today, we're just going to have a very quick chat about some of the different receptors found around the body and what a receptor is. So, to start us off, some key terms that we need to understand as we jump into this next portion of the nervous system. So, a stimulus. A stimulus, very simply put, is a change. What is it a change in? Well, it's a change in either the internal environment or the external environment. So, an example of the internal environment could be your body temperature or your blood temperature. A change in the external environment could be a change in the temperature of the room, for instance. Okay. In terms of receptors, receptors are specialized structures, so specialized types of cells that detect a stimulus. So they detect a change in that internal or external environment. Finally, a group of receptors make up a sense organ. Okay, so a group of receptors, so a group of photoreceptors are going to be things that make up the eye to help you see. A group of taste receptors or chemoreceptors is going to be helping to form your taste buds on your tongue. Okay, so when we look at the different types of receptors, we've got 5 key categories that you need to know. Starting at the top, thermoreceptors. Thermoreceptors detect temperature. The way I've always remembered this is a thermometer. Thermometer is what we use to detect temperature, and the same stays true for thermoreceptors. Now we find them in 2 different spots around the body. The first spot is in the skin, and these thermoreceptors are what we refer to as peripheral thermoreceptors. Okay, so they detect changes in the external environment. The hypothalamus, on the other hand, detects changes in the internal temperature, and so we refer to these thermoreceptors as central thermoreceptors. The next kind of receptor that we're going to look at is an osmoreceptor. Now you'll notice that all of these words are ending in the word receptor, so it's really just important that we pay attention to the prefix. So, osmo. We are talking with osmoreceptors about detecting changes in the level of concentration of different dissolved substances, and this goes via the hypothalamus. This is really to help us maintain our osmotic pressure. Okay, and by maintaining our osmotic pressure, we are maintaining our body's ability to balance its own water content. The next kind of receptor is known as a chemoreceptor. They detect chemicals, and again, the key part from this one is the chem from chemicals. We can draw that apart over to the chem from chemoreceptor. And when we're talking about chemoreceptors, there's lots of different examples. So let's talk about them very briefly now. Number 1, the nose. You have chemoreceptors in your nose which are particularly sensitive to changes in smell. So we're detecting the chemicals found in the air. Next, in your mouth, we have taste buds. Now these taste buds are chemoreceptors that are particularly sensitive to different kinds of chemicals that we might ingest. So the way that glucose tastes very different to, say, sodium chloride, a salt. Okay. The third instance is in the aortic and carotid bodies and in the medulla oblongata. These structures are used in our gas regulation, and they're used to detect changes in the chemicals carbon dioxide and hydrogen ions, or pH. Okay. The 4th kind of receptor is a mechanoreceptor. And there are 2 different types of mechanoreceptors. There are those that are sensitive to light touch. And so some examples of those include at the very base of a hair follicle. So if you move any hair cell in your body, you can feel it pulling on the skin. You can feel the hair itself as it moves that skin. And they are particularly effective for fine touch and really sensitive feeling or sensation. The next example is pressure, and pressure receptors are found deeper in the skin, and they respond to a firmer touch. Now, the reason that they respond to a firmer touch is because they are found deeper in the skin. Okay, it takes more pressure in order to trigger them. Okay, if they were found on the surface of the skin, they would be overly pressure sensitive. Our final kind of receptor is arguably the most interesting. It's known as a nociceptor, or nociceptor. A nociceptor is that detects pain. And pain is simply damage to a tissue or the excessive stimulation of stimuli. So an instance of excessive stimulation could be if you held a hot pan for a long period of time. There would be an excess of heat stimulation. Okay? Now, we find nociceptors, on the skin surface muscle, basically all internal organs apart from the brain. And this gives us both our visceral and somatic sensation. Now, the reason that we want pain receptors is so that we can detect pain and we can prevent further damage being done, okay? So we can take action to prevent further damage. If you don't have pain receptors, you don't have nociceptors, you can't take action and you can actually put yourself in more harm and in the risk of more harm by not changing the way that you respond. Okay, so when we talk about the adaptation of these particular receptors, mechanoreceptors can adapt rapidly. Okay, and so some examples of that are for people who wear glasses, rings, watches. They adapt, I should say, to the particular stimulation. So again, in the case of a watch, that light pressure that you might feel around your wrist, so much so that after a while you no longer are aware of that stimulation. Okay. On the other side of things, pain receptors adapt very little, if anything at all. And so pain is always going to continue to present as a stimulus. So when we look at all the receptors together in the skin, we can see, well, your skin is a hotspot for a lot of them, and that makes sense when we think about the skin as being the key means of communication between you and the outside and the external environment. It's important that we have our heat, our really light mechanoreceptors, pain receptors, thermoreceptors, and then the finer ones with hair movement. The only ones that aren't located very close to the surface are those for strong pressure. Okay, so again, we want them deeper within the dermis of the skin, and the hair movement as well. So we can see, if I highlight this just in yellow, these hair movements are the really fine mechanoreceptors, okay, located a little bit deeper in response to those hairs.